So over my time doing this YouTube channel, talking about crime-related topics, a lot of people have seen me go into back and forth debates with a bunch of left-wing people who are, let's say, not all that bright. And one of the things that I often have the biggest struggle of getting these people to understand is the fact that criminals are not Aladdin. They're not kind-hearted people just stealing because they stumbled into poverty. They are people who, like many other people who are non-criminal, respond to incentives. And if you lower the consequences, you lower the barrier to criminality, you will see more criminals. You will see them respond in kind, and that will lead to spikes in crime. And nationwide, this is where we're going. We're going towards more sympathy for the criminal, less idealizing law and order, and that is leading to a bunch of problems, a bunch of repeat offenders. And this is encapsulated perfectly in this story out of New York City, where a spree criminal cited bail reform as one of the reasons why he was not worried about finally getting caught. But before we get into this, we got to talk about your sleep. So let me toss it to the sponsor, then we'll come back over here and discuss this insane case on the other side. Do you have difficulty sleeping? Well, you're not alone. 164 million Americans report difficulty falling asleep. On top of that, there was a study that featured 4,000 participants, and 27% of them had severe sleep problems. This is one of the reasons why tens of thousands of Americans are trying this amazing supplement to help aid them in falling asleep, because it's not like it's no big deal. It's a serious, often ignored health problem, and you can try this supplement, which has 7 different nutrients proven to help aid in sleep length and your ability to fall asleep, over at sleepwithajw.com. Get the nutrients your body needs to sleep for 51% off, 60-day money-back guarantee by clicking the link in the pinned comment and the top of the description. Also, if you're mobile watching on YouTube, go to the more under the description of this video and you'll find your link there to try as well. That is sleepwithajw.com, sleepwithajw.com.
What a mess. We're talking about 6 different robbery locations, 6 different crime scenes, including the Woodside Motel just behind me. That's where it's alleged that 2 men were robbed inside. All this happened across 3 boroughs over the course of just a few hours.
So we have a crime spree story. Of course, we're talking about suspects who are repeat offenders. The crime that they're committing were robberies. They did about 6 of them in 3 different boroughs in the city of New York. For those of you who don't know, the city of New York has 5 boroughs, and each borough is the equivalent to a county in another place. We're one of the only cities where we have 5 counties within the city, but that's what a borough is for those of you who are unaware.
And it's what these suspects said, what one of them said when they were taken into custody, that really has got our attention this morning and is drawing new attention to some of the issues with the state's troubled bail reform laws. Let's go through what we know, because there is a lot to go over.
Now, eventually, these criminals, these spree robbers, ended up getting caught. 6 crimes was just 1 too many, and the NYPD ended up making an arrest. But that's not the story. The part of the cops doing their job is not today's tale. Today's tale is what this person said after being caught, because it cuts to the heart of the main issue in the state of New York, which is bail reform.
These 2 individuals were allegedly in a white minivan that crashed on West 179th Street and Cedar Avenue. Now, that is in the Bronx. That's where it all ended.
So they commit the robberies and all that. They're in a van. They end up getting into a crash in a busy intersection in the Bronx, putting more people at risk. And that is how they ultimately ended up being caught. Also, I am not going to ignore the fact that this officer's hair looks absolutely ridiculous. He looks like he's an extra from the movie Grease. What are you doing? Why are you dressed like a cop from the 50s, at least in the hair? I don't understand it. Why did you think that was acceptable? I bet you feel kind of awkward that you're the cop right in frame with this insane criminal at the moment that he got arrested. Look, we gotta point out the facts as we see them. You know, typically I'm pretty pro law enforcement on this channel, but that officer right there, that can't be ignored. We're not just gonna let that hair slip by. We're gonna point out that it looks ridiculous, and he looks like he's maybe doing like community theater, playing like a new version of Grease on stage or something like that.
About 2 hours earlier at 12:58 a.m., they are alleged to have committed the first of 6 robberies, stealing jewelry from 2 females on Alston Avenue. That's in Corona, Queens.
I mean, seriously, look at that crash. That is a violent crash. They ended up crumpling the front of the van, and this is a busy area. So the idea that, oh, they're just Aladdins, they're just stealing to feed their families, those little poor kids that, remember Aladdin gave bread to those poor kids, isn't that sweet? tweet is not the case. They're putting people in danger. What if you were in the way in this street when they were driving out of control and they ended up crashing? What if it was your child or somebody you know that got injured, that got killed because these guys decided that they needed to rob in 6 different incidents over the course of a couple of hours, and they didn't want to be taken by the police? They decided to put each and every person near them at risk so that they could get away, so that they could escape the limited consequences that New York enforces against criminals like this, which again, as one of these perpetrators will highlight, aren't even really in existence. These are not good people. These are not Aladdins. These are predators who targeted individuals in the middle of the night, scared the crap out of them, robbed them for financial gain, and didn't care who they hurt or potentially killed along the way.
They are alleged to have committed the first of 6 robberies, stealing jewelry from 2 females on Alston Avenue, that's in Corona, Queens. Minutes later, the same 2 guys robbed 2 people inside the lobby of the Woodside Motel. Again, that's where I am. That happened inside the lobby. Then to Williamsburg, Brooklyn. A man is robbed on 11th Street. At 2:01 a.m., back to Queens in Jackson Heights. 6 people are robbed in an outdoor dining shed. 30 minutes later, that same white minivan, now it's in Manhattan, Washington Square Park, where a food truck is robbed. And finally, at about 3:05 a.m., a woman is robbed in Inwood. The crash happened shortly after that as they were heading over into the Bronx.
So these guys are going around robbing individuals, a woman of her jewelry, real nice, just yanking jewelry off a woman, going into a motel, robbing people in the motel, robbing people at outdoor dining. By the way, why the hell are we still doing outdoor dining? It was a stupid idea at the time, and all it does now is just take up a bunch of parking spaces. Then they go to Washington Square Park, rob a small business owner, likely an immigrant, who's selling food out of a food truck or food cart. These guys don't have a bunch of money. They work tirelessly in order to serve the communities that they are actually stationed in, but they robbed them anyway, and then they just continued on their crime spree. I don't know how many victims. I wasn't tallying them up properly during the course of this guy's segment, but we might be at well over a dozen people that were victimized by these absolute scumbags, by these absolute thugs. And again, they're doing this in part because they know that there's no consequences. They're doing this because they know that they won't serve any jail time. If they're arrested, they'll be released immediately. And don't take my word for it, they said it themselves.
One of the suspects taken into custody by the NYPD, and one suspect said, hey, look, he's not worried. He'll be out soon. Listen to what he said.
I'll be out bail 24 hours. I'll be out bail.
Kind of hard to hear what he said there. We were a little far away, but he said, I'm going to be out in 24 hours. In 24 hours, I will be out.
Yeah, that's right. He's like, I'll be out on bail in 24 hours. Don't worry about it. I'll be out on bail. Because in the state of New York, according to the bail reform law, which Kathy Hochul recently defended because she said, oh, it's definitely not causing the spike in crime. Don't worry about it. Our woke, crappy criminal justice policies that Andrew Cuomo instituted so he could run for president need to stay because they're not causing any issues. And here you have a guy saying, oh, I'll be out on bail tomorrow. I'll be out in 24 hours. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get away with this. And he's 100% right, because all of these robberies, the crashing of the car, the putting people in danger, these are borderline not bail eligible offenses. Now, I know they made some tweaks here and there, so maybe they might be able to charge him some minuscule amount of bail in order to make him pay a little bit of something. But this is a guy who commits 6 different robberies in 3 different boroughs over the course of a couple of hours, so he'll easily be able to make up that money just by stealing from more hardworking citizens of this state. Seriously, pay close attention to where this all went down, where this crash happened, which obviously was the result of this suspect going at high speeds. There's a bunch of apartments on the one side, so there's a lot of people living there. It is not unusual for people in New York City to be walking their dog late or out on the street because they have a late shift or anything like that. He could have easily killed those people. And then when they cut back to the officer's side, you see that they're up against the backdrop of a very busy thoroughfare. This is not quite a highway, but it is a pretty big road that has a lot of traffic, that even at around 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning is pretty busy. As you can see, those cars are whizzing by. This guy had no regard for anybody else's safety. This guy had no regard for anybody else's property rights. He's robbing people, terrifying people with this buddy, driving like a maniac, slams into this post, could have easily killed someone, and he's laughing, talking trash next to a guy who's making his hair look like the Fonz, saying he'll be out in 24 hours.
Now, police say that a gun was displayed in all the robberies, and the gun was found inside that crashed minivan.
Oh, did I forget to mention that all of these robberies were armed robberies? So at any point in time, this person who has no regard for human life, no regard for anybody else but himself, he could have murdered these people for his property, and he'll still be out. He'll still be let out within 24 hours with either no bail at all or minuscule bail. It's absurd. It's insane. And this is who the policy is made for.
We should point out that this incident happened just a day after we saw that big hearing about the state's bail reform laws that would happen. Some lawmakers said that clearly they need to have changes. Others says the data is unclear. It's unclear if the rise in crime that we've seen is directly related to some of these bail reform laws, but the word on the street apparently is a little bit different. That's the story there.
So again, we have all these people talking about how the data is unclear. We didn't do enough studies in order to figure out if we can attribute the bulk of the rise in crime to the criminal justice reforms like bail reform, like raise the age, or similar. And the thing is, we know for a fact that this is what is driving this up. We saw that since they instituted raise the age, which makes it very difficult to charge underage offenders as adults, that the number of youths being indicted for a homicide jumped up dramatically. It more than doubled in the city of New York. We see in bail reform, when people are released over and over again, same day automatically, they continue to reoffend. And the game that these people play in the New York State gubernatorial office and across the left-wing media in this state is they say, well, the percentage of people that are rearrested is relatively similar. And the thing is, obviously that's going to be the case because the majority of people who were arrested for petty crimes in the first place. So we're talking about 90% of people who didn't offend before bail reform law. So if you just let out an additional 1% of super predators, then statistically it's going to look like a bit of an anomaly, but not that significant. This is the game that they're playing, except for the fact that those 1% are the predators that are constantly reoffending, and they're the ones creating the problems. You have to be blind, deaf, and stupid, otherwise known as a left-wing activist, to ignore the reality when you have a criminal looking directly into the camera saying, I'll be out tomorrow. It's not a big deal. What are you guys gonna do? There's no law and order. There's no consequences, so I'm just gonna keep reoffending, and maybe the next time I rob a small business owner who's wrapping up and closing up his food truck, maybe I'll blow his head off. Maybe you might care at that point in time, but until then, continue to treat me like Aladdin, and I'll continue to speed down neighborhoods that are quite busy, and hell, maybe I'll even kill a kid while I'm doing it, and it's okay, because remember, I'm the victim in this scenario. That guy's the victim of systemic racism, and apparently the police, even that Fonzie guy, those are the oppressors. That is how it is genuinely viewed by the left wing in this country, and it's absurd, it's insane, and we're seeing the consequences over and over and over again, and it's time to say that we've had enough. No more of this nonsense. Let's cut the crap and arrest these people and put them away for a long time. If you stick a gun in 6 people's faces, I'm sorry, well more than a dozen people's faces, to do armed robberies while they're eating, while they're in a hotel, while they're just walking around because you want their jewelry or their property or whatever, then you need to be locked away for a serious period of time. You need to learn a lesson that that's not appropriate, and you need to be removed from society. I don't want to see you gloating about how you're going to be released the next day. This guy is a menace to society, him and his friend, and giving him a slap on the wrist and hoping that they do better next time is not going to solve any problem in this city. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me showing you once again that bail reform is something that the criminals are taking advantage of. Till next time.